Ashley Marquez stood motionless behind the frosted glass partition of her husband's corner office, her breath catching as she watched Derek lean over his secretary's desk. Vanessa Chen looked up at him with an expression that had nothing to do with quarterly reports or client meetings. The intimate way his hand lingered on her shoulder, the soft laugh she gave at whatever he whispered, the practiced choreography of two people who had clearly done this dance before. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. For months, Derek had called her paranoid, jealous, insecure. He'd rolled his eyes when she mentioned how often Vanessa called during dinner, how frequently he stayed late at Morrison Associates, how his phone buzzed with urgent messages that made him smile in ways Ashlyn hadn't seen in years. When she'd suggested maybe they needed some time away together, he'd snorted and said she was imagining problems that didn't exist. Ashley pressed herself closer to the glass, watching as Derek's fingers traced down Vanessa's arm before she pulled away with a coy smile. The secretary's red dress was the same one Ashley had admired in the department store window last month, the one Derek had said was too expensive when she'd mentioned wanting it. Apparently, some women were worth the investment. The irony would have been delicious if it weren't so devastating. Here she was, sneaking around her own husband's law firm like a detective, trying to catch evidence of what her gut had been screaming for months. What made it even more bitter was that Derek had no idea who he was really married to. For 6 years, she'd played the role of the supportive wife, the former marketing executive who'd stepped back to support his career, who managed their social calendar and smiled prettily at firm events while he climbed the partnership ladder. What Derek didn't know was that Ashley Marquez had never really stepped back from anything. Ashley slipped out of the law firm's 42nd floor offices before Derek and Vanessa noticed her presence. The elevator ride down felt eternal, each floor marking another level of certainty about what she'd witnessed. By the time she reached the parking garage, her mind had already shifted from shock to calculation. The emotional pain would come later. Right now, she needed to think strategically. She sat in her silver Mercedes for several minutes, staring at the concrete pillars of the underground garage. 6 years of marriage. 12 years together if she counted their dating relationship that had started in law school. Derek Morrison had swept her off her feet with his ambition, his 5-year plan to make partner, his vision of their perfect life together in River Oaks. He'd supported her decision to leave Hartley Communications to focus on their relationship, had encouraged her to pursue her consulting work at a more relaxed pace. What he'd never bothered to ask was what kind of consulting work she was actually doing. Ashley pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found the number she needed. The call was answered on the second ring. Marcus Rivera speaking. Marcus, it's Ashley. I need a favor. There was a pause. Marcus Rivera was the managing partner at Rivera Associates, Derek's biggest competitor in corporate law, and one of the few people who knew exactly what Ashley's consulting firm actually did. What kind of favor? Marcus asked, his tone shifting to something more professional. The kind that involves phone records and financial statements, Ashley said simply. Derek has been careless, and I think it's time he learned about consequences. Marcus chuckled, a sound that held no humor. How careless are we talking? 847 calls to his secretary this month, lunches charged to the firm credit card that I'm not invited to, hotel reservations that don't match his business travel. Ashley's voice remained steady despite the fury building in her chest. I want everything, Marcus. Every detail, every pattern, every mistake he's made while thinking his little wife was too busy planning charity galas to notice. Marcus said carefully, you know I can't help you hack into Derek's personal communications. That's not just unethical, it's illegal. Ashley smiled, watching a BMW pull into the spot across from her. The driver was a woman in her 30s, probably another lawyer working late, probably going home to an empty apartment because she'd prioritized her career over relationships. 5 years ago, Ashley might have envied her. Now she understood that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room was the one everyone underestimated. I'm not asking you to hack anything, Ashley said. I'm asking you to help me examine records I already have legal access to as Derek's spouse. Community property laws in Texas are very clear about financial accounts and business expenses, especially when those expenses involve potential misconduct. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. What aren't you telling me, Ashley? Ashley reached into her purse and pulled out a small recording device, the same one she'd been carrying for the past 3 weeks since her suspicions had crystallized into certainty. She'd started recording Derek's phone conversations, his meetings, his casual remarks about working late. Initially, she'd told herself it was just for her own sanity, to prove to herself that she wasn't the paranoid wife he kept claiming she was. What she'd discovered was far more interesting than a simple affair. Derek has been using firm resources for personal matters, Ashley said. Client development funds for romantic dinners, business credit cards for gifts that never made it home, conference room reservations for meetings that weren't about law. She paused, letting that sink in. Morrison Associates has very strict policies about personal use of firm assets, the kind of policies that can trigger ethics investigations. Marcus whistled softly. You've been documenting this. For weeks, audio recordings, receipt copies, calendar inconsistencies. Ashley's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. I've been very thorough, Marcus. It's amazing what you can accomplish when your husband thinks you're too busy organizing fundraisers to pay attention to his business affairs. The truth was that Ashley had never stopped being the ambitious marketing executive Derek thought he'd married. She'd simply redirected her skills into something more lucrative and considerably more discreet. While Derek climbed the ladder at Morrison Associates, Ashley had built her own empire in the shadows. Marcus Strategic Consulting wasn't just another boutique firm helping small businesses with their marketing problems. It was a corporate intelligence operation that specialized in competitive analysis, market research, and what Ashley euphemistically called information arbitrage.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you're enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
Her clients included some of the largest companies in Houston, Dallas, and Austin. They paid her substantial retainers to gather intelligence on their competitors, to analyze market trends before they became obvious, and to identify opportunities for strategic advancement. What made Ashley's firm particularly valuable was her ability to operate invisibly, to gather information through social connections and professional networks that no one suspected existed. Derek knew she did consulting work. He even bragged about it sometimes at dinner parties, introducing her as his brilliant wife who helped local businesses improve their strategies. What he didn't know was that Marquez Strategic Consulting generated more revenue than his law firm partnership, that Ashley had been quietly building a client base that included 3 Fortune 500 companies, and that her information networks extended far beyond Houston's business community. The BMW driver had disappeared into the elevator. Ashley checked the time and realized Derek would be leaving the office soon, probably taking Vanessa to another expensive dinner that would appear on the Morrison Associates expense reports as client development. The predictability of his behavior would have been almost endearing if it weren't so insulting. I need 2 things from you, Marcus, Ashley continued. First, I need a comprehensive analysis of Morrison Associates expense patterns for the past year, focusing on charges that might represent personal use of firm resources. Second, I need you to pull together an ethics complaint packet, properly formatted and professionally documented. Ashley, if you're planning to destroy Derek's career, you need to be absolutely certain about this. Ethics violations can end a lawyer's license permanently. Are you sure you want to go down that road? Ashley thought about the way Vanessa had looked at Derek through the glass partition, the intimate familiarity of their interaction, the casual dismissal of their marriage vows that Derek had clearly been practicing for months. She thought about 6 years of supporting his ambitions, of playing the perfect partner wife, of subjugating her own career growth to make room for his success. Most of all, she thought about how much Derek was going to regret underestimating her. I'm sure, Ashley said. But Marcus, this isn't just about destroying Derek's career. This is about making sure everyone in Houston's legal community understands exactly what kind of man they've been working with. And, more importantly, it's about making sure Vanessa Chen learns what happens when you build your future on someone else's foundation. After ending the call with Marcus, Ashley remained in her car for another 20 minutes, organizing her thoughts and reviewing her strategy. The emotional betrayal of Derek's affair was devastating, But the business side of her mind was already calculating the most efficient way to maximize the damage while protecting herself from collateral consequences. Derek had made several critical errors in judgment, and not just the obvious ones involving hotel reservations and intimate dinners. His biggest mistake was assuming that Ashley had been passive during their marriage, that her reduced public profile meant reduced capability or ambition. He'd confused strategic invisibility with actual weakness, a distinction that was about to prove very expensive for him. Ashley's phone buzzed with a text message from Derek. "Working late tonight, client dinner, don't wait up." She typed back quickly. "Of course, darling. I'll be at the Riverside Charity Planning Committee meeting until 9. Love you." Both messages were lies, but Ashley's was strategic, while Derek's was simply selfish. The difference would become apparent very soon. Instead of going home or to any charity meeting, Ashley drove to the Hartley Communications Building in downtown Houston. Even though she'd left the company 6 years ago to focus on Derek's career, she'd maintained her relationship with several key executives there. More importantly, she'd retained access to their research databases and competitive intelligence resources through her consulting work. The security guard at the front desk recognized her immediately. "Evening, Ms. Marquez. Working late?" "You know how it is. Client deadlines don't respect normal business hours." Ashley signed the visitor log and took the elevator to the 38th floor, where Hartley's research department operated around the clock. The research floor was buzzing with activity, despite the late hour. 3 analysts were working on what looked like a major competitive analysis project, their screens displaying financial charts and market data. Ashley nodded to the team's supervisor, Patricia Wong, who'd been her colleague during her full-time years of Hartley. "Patricia, I need a favor. Personal matter, but I'll pay the firm's standard consulting rates." Patricia looked up from her computer screen. "What kind of personal matter?" Ashley handed her a flash drive containing copies of Derek's financial records from their joint accounts, credit card statements, and business expense reports that she'd been gathering over the past few months. "I need a forensic analysis of spending patterns, specifically looking for irregularities that might indicate misuse of business funds or undisclosed personal relationships." Patricia's eyebrows rose. "Ashley, this looks like preparation for a divorce case. Are you sure you want Hartley involved in your personal legal matters?" "This isn't about divorce," Ashley said, though that wasn't entirely true. "This is about financial fraud and ethical violations that could impact business relationships throughout Houston's legal community. If Derek Morrison has been misusing firm resources for personal affairs, that's a matter of professional accountability, not just marital discord." That was technically accurate, even if it wasn't the complete picture. Ashley had learned long ago that the most effective way to navigate complex situations was to frame them in terms that made sense to each audience. Patricia needed to understand this as a business integrity issue, not a personal revenge scenario. Patricia inserted the flash drive into her computer and began reviewing the data. After several minutes of analysis, her expression grew more serious. "Ashley, some of these patterns are quite obvious. Hotel charges on nights when there's no corresponding business travel, restaurant expenses that are consistently above the firm's per-meal guidelines, credit card transactions at jewelry stores and boutiques that don't match any client development activities." "How obvious?" Ashley asked. "Obvious enough that any competent auditor would flag them immediately. If Morrison Associates has been allowing these expenses without proper justification, they could be looking at serious compliance issues with their professional liability insurance." Patricia paused, studying one particular screen of data. "There's also a pattern of cell phone usage that suggests personal relationship activity during business hours, extended calls to the same number at frequencies that exceed any reasonable business purpose." Ashley felt a grim satisfaction as Patricia confirmed what she'd already suspected. Derek hadn't just been careless about his affair, he'd been careless about covering up the financial evidence. His arrogance had made him sloppy, and his sloppiness was about to become very expensive for him. "I need a comprehensive report," Ashley said.
Professional quality, suitable for presentation to ethics boards or regulatory authorities. Timeline for patterns, dollar amounts for questionable expenses,
Comparative analysis showing deviation from normal business practices. Patricia nodded. I can have a preliminary report ready by tomorrow afternoon. Full analysis by Friday. But Ashley, if you're planning to use this against Derek professionally, you need to be prepared for the consequences. Houston's legal community is smaller than people realize. This kind of accusation will follow both of you for years. Ashley smiled, but there was no warmth in the expression. Patricia, Derek made his choices when he decided I was too naive to notice his behavior. He's about to learn that naive and strategic are not the same thing. After leaving Hartley Communications, Ashley drove to her real office, the place Derek had never bothered to visit despite 6 years of marriage. Marquez Strategic Consulting occupied a small but expensive suite on the 23rd floor of the Pennzoil Place building, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Houston's glittering skyline. The office was ostensibly a one-person operation, but Ashley employed a network of freelance analysts, researchers, and information specialists who worked on various projects throughout the year. Tonight, she needed their particular expertise for a very personal project. Ashley unlocked her private office and activated her secure computer system. The workstation was considerably more sophisticated than anything Derek had at Morrison Associates, with encrypted communications, multiple VPN connections, and access to databases that weren't available to the general public. This was where Ashley conducted the real work of Marquez Strategic Consulting, the competitive intelligence gathering that generated most of her revenue. She pulled up Derek's complete digital footprint, something she'd been methodically assembling for the past month. Cell phone records, credit card transactions, professional communications, social media activity, even GPS tracking data from his car's navigation system. The picture that emerged was devastating in its clarity. 847 calls to Vanessa Chen in the past 30 days, with an average duration of 12 minutes per call. Hotel reservations at the Four Seasons and St. Regis hotels on nights when Derek claimed to be working late at the office. Lunch reservations at Houston's most romantic restaurants, always for 2 people, always during weekday afternoons when Ashley assumed he was in client meetings. Most damning of all were the gift purchases. Derek had spent nearly $8,000 in the past 3 months on jewelry, clothing, and luxury items that had never appeared in their home. The receipts were carefully preserved in Derek's personal files, apparently as some kind of romantic documentation of his affair with Vanessa. Ashley leaned back in her chair, surveying the evidence displayed across her computer monitors. Derek had been living a double life for months, but he'd been remarkably sloppy about covering his tracks. Either he'd assumed Ashley would never discover his activities, or he'd simply stopped caring about the consequences. Both assumptions were about to prove catastrophically wrong. Ashley's phone rang, displaying Derek's number. She let it go to voicemail and then listened to his message with growing amazement at his casual dishonesty. Hey babe, client dinner is running later than expected. Probably won't be home until after midnight. Don't worry about me, just get some rest. Love you. The timestamp showed 9:47 p.m. According to the GPS data from Derek's car, he was currently parked outside Vanessa Chen's apartment building in the Galleria area, approximately 15 miles from any restaurant that could plausibly host a client dinner. The level of deception would have been almost admirable if it weren't so personally insulting. Ashley saved Derek's voicemail to her evidence file and began drafting a comprehensive timeline of his affair. Every hotel reservation, every unexplained expense, every lie about working late or traveling for business. The pattern that emerged was methodical and extensive, suggesting that Derek's relationship with Vanessa had been going on for at least 6 months, possibly longer. What made the situation particularly egregious was Derek's use of Morrison Associates resources to fund his affair. The firm's credit cards had paid for hotel rooms, expensive dinners, and gifts that clearly had nothing to do with client development or business operations. If the firm's managing partners were unaware of Derek's activities, they would be furious about the misuse of company funds. If they were aware and had been tolerating it, they could face regulatory scrutiny themselves. Ashley spent another hour reviewing the financial evidence before moving to the next phase of her investigation. Using her access to professional networking databases, she began researching Vanessa Chen's background, employment history, and professional qualifications. What she discovered was interesting. Vanessa Chen was 28 years old, recently graduated from the University of Houston with a degree in business administration. She'd been working at Morrison Associates for only 18 months, hired directly into a senior secretary position despite limited relevant experience. Her salary was significantly higher than comparable positions at other firms, and she'd received 2 substantial raises in the past year. More intriguingly, Vanessa's previous employment history showed a pattern of short-term positions at various professional service firms, each lasting between 12 and 18 months. At each firm, she'd been employed as an administrative assistant or secretary to a senior executive. At each firm, she'd left under circumstances that weren't clearly documented in the public records. Ashley cross-referenced Vanessa's employment timeline with marriage and divorce records in Harris County. The pattern that emerged was illuminating. At 3 of Vanessa's previous employers, senior executives had divorced their wives within 6 months of Vanessa's departure from the firm. In 2 cases, the divorces had involved allegations of infidelity and substantial sanitary settlements. The picture that emerged suggested that Vanessa Chen might be significantly more calculated than Ashley had initially assumed. Rather than being a naive young woman who'd been swept up in an affair with her married boss, Vanessa appeared to be someone who had deliberately targeted married executives as a career advancement strategy. That revelation changed Ashley's entire approach to the situation. Derek wasn't just cheating on his wife with his secretary. He was being manipulated by someone who had apparently made a profession out of destroying marriages for financial gain. Ashley felt a cold fury building in her chest, different from the emotional betrayal she'd experienced watching Derek and Vanessa together. This wasn't just about her marriage anymore. It was about protecting other women from a predator who used professional relationships to destroy families. She reached for her phone and dialed Marcus Rivera's number again. "Marcus, it's Ashley. I need to add another component to our Derek investigation." "What kind of component?" "The kind that involves background checks and professional references. Derek's secretary has an interesting employment history, and I think Morrison Associates needs to know exactly who they've been trusting with confidential client information." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Ashley, you're talking about turning this into something much bigger than a simple ethics violation. If you're alleging systematic fraud or professional misconduct involving multiple parties, that could trigger state bar investigations and potentially federal attention." Ashley looked out at Houston's skyline, thinking about all the other wives who might be sitting at home right now wondering why their husbands were working so late, why their credit card statements showed unexplained charges, why their marriages felt increasingly distant and hollow. "Good," Ashley said. "It's time someone held them accountable for their choices." The next morning, Ashley woke at 6 a.m. to an empty bed and a text message from Derek explaining that his client dinner had run so late he decided to stay at the downtown Marriott rather than drive home.
Derek moved around his desk and sat in his chair, putting the solid mahogany surface between them like a barrier. Vanessa's been very helpful with the administrative aspects. She's quite capable. I'm sure she is. 28 years old, business degree from University of Houston, very attractive. Ashley's tone remained conversational, even admiring. "You mentioned she'd been particularly valuable to the firm lately?" Derek's eyes narrowed slightly. "How do you know her age and educational background?" Ashley smiled innocently. "Derek, you've talked about her quite a bit recently. I pay attention when you discuss work. I always have." That last statement carried layers of meaning that Derek would only understand later. For now, he seemed to accept her explanation, though his posture remained tense. "She's a good employee," Derek said carefully. "Professional, dedicated, willing to put in extra hours when needed." Extra hours indeed. 847 phone calls this month, according to our cell phone records. Ashley delivered this information in the same pleasant tone she might use to discuss the weather.
That's quite a lot of professional communication. The blood drained from Derek's face so quickly that Ashley wondered if he might faint. She'd imagined this moment for weeks, but the reality was even more satisfying than her fantasies. Derek's careful composure cracked like ice under sudden pressure, revealing the panic underneath his professional facade. "You've been monitoring my phone calls?" His voice was barely above a whisper. "I've been reviewing our family's communication expenses," Ashley corrected. "As the person who manages our household budget, I notice when our cell phone bill increases by 400% in a single month. Imagine my surprise when I discovered that nearly all of those additional charges were calls to the same number." Derek stood abruptly, pacing to the window that overlooked downtown Houston. "Ashley, I can explain." "I'm sure you can. You're a lawyer, after all. Explanation is your profession." Ashley remained seated, her voice calm and controlled. "But before you begin crafting your defense, you should know that I've already conducted my own investigation." Derek turned back to face her, his expression shifting from panic to anger. "Investigation? What the hell does that mean?" Ashley opened her briefcase and removed a manila folder thick with documents. "It means I've documented every hotel reservation, every restaurant charge, every unexplained expense from the past 6 months. It means I've analyzed our financial records, your credit card statements, and your professional communications. It means I've verified your location during every evening you claimed to be working late or traveling for business." She placed the folder on Derek's desk, close enough for him to see, but not to reach without coming closer to her. "It also means I've researched Vanessa Chen's employment history and discovered some very interesting patterns in her previous positions." Derek's hands clenched into fists at his sides. "You had no right to spy on me." "I had every right to investigate unexplained charges on our joint credit cards and suspicious patterns in our household expenses." Ashley's tone hardened slightly. "What I discovered goes far beyond marital infidelity, Derek. You've been using Morrison Associates resources to fund your affair. You've been sharing confidential client information with someone who has no legal right to access it. You've been systematically violating your professional responsibilities and your fiduciary duties to this firm." Derek stared at her for a long moment, his face cycling through expressions of rage, fear, and calculation. Ashley could practically see him trying to determine how much damage she could actually cause and how he might minimize the consequences. "What do you want?" he asked finally. Ashley smiled, but there was no warmth in the expression. "That's exactly the wrong question, Derek. The question you should be asking is what I'm going to do with this information, regardless of what you want." Before Derek could respond, there was a knock at the office door. Vanessa Chen entered without waiting for permission, carrying a stack of files and wearing the confident expression of someone who believed she was interrupting a routine spousal visit. "Derek, I have those depositions you needed to review before the Henderson meeting at 2. Vanessa stopped short when she realized Ashley was staring directly at her, the manila folder open on the desk between them. The moment stretched uncomfortably as all 3 participants processed the new dynamic. Vanessa's eyes darted between Ashley and Derek, clearly recognizing that something significant was happening, but not yet understanding the full scope of the situation. "Mrs. Morrison," she said carefully, "I didn't realize you were here. Should I come back later?" "Actually, this is perfect timing," Ashley replied, closing the folder and standing. "I was just discussing with Derek how much the firm values your contributions. 847 phone calls worth of contributions, in fact." Vanessa's face went pale, but she recovered more quickly than Derek had. I'm sorry, I don't understand." Ashley studied the younger woman with professional interest. Vanessa Chen was undeniably attractive, with the kind of polished appearance that suggested considerable investment in personal presentation. Her dress was expensive, her jewelry tasteful, her makeup expertly applied. Everything about her suggested someone who understood the importance of image in professional advancement. What Ashley found most interesting was Vanessa's composure under pressure. Rather than dissolving into panic or embarrassment, she was maintaining her professional demeanor while clearly calculating her next move.
Either she was an exceptionally skilled actress, or she had experience managing difficult situations.
I think you understand perfectly, Ashley said. But let me clarify for everyone's benefit. I've spent the past month documenting a systematic pattern of personal relationship activity between my husband and his secretary, funded by Morrison and Associates resources and involving the misuse of confidential client information. Derek stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. Ashley, that's enough. You're making serious accusations that could damage innocent people's careers. Ashley laughed, a sound with no humor in it. Innocent. Derek, you charged $8,000 in romantic dinners and hotel rooms to your firm credit card. You've been sharing privileged attorney-client communications with someone who has no legal right to access them. You've been conducting a personal relationship using company resources and company time. She turned to Vanessa. And you've been participating in activities that violate multiple professional conduct codes, not to mention basic ethical standards. Vanessa's composure finally cracked slightly. Mrs. Morrison, I think you're misunderstanding the nature of my professional relationship with Derek. Am I? Then perhaps you can explain why your employment history shows a pattern of short-term positions at various firms, each ending shortly before a senior executive's marriage dissolved due to infidelity allegations. Ashley's voice remained conversational, but her words carried the precision of a surgeon's blade. Or why your current salary is 30% higher than comparable positions at other firms, despite your limited relevant experience. The silence that followed was profound. Derek looked genuinely shocked, apparently unaware of Vanessa's professional history. Vanessa's careful mask slipped entirely, revealing something cold and calculating underneath her professional veneer. I don't know what kind of investigation you think you've conducted, Vanessa said, her voice gaining strength, but making false accusations about my professional background could constitute defamation. Ashley reached into her briefcase and pulled out a second folder, this one labeled with Vanessa's name. Would you like to review the documentation? Employment records from Henderson and Associates, where you worked as executive assistant to managing partner James Henderson for 14 months before his wife filed for divorce, citing adultery. Financial records from Caldwell Martinez and Webb, where you were personal secretary to senior partner Robert Caldwell for 16 months before his 23-year marriage ended under similar circumstances. Ashley placed the folder on Derek's desk next to the first one. Or we could discuss Morrison and Associates, where you've been employed for 18 months, have received 2 substantial salary increases, and have been conducting an extensive personal relationship with a married partner while having access to confidential client information. Derek sank into his chair, staring at the folders as if they contained explosives. Vanessa, is this true? Vanessa's expression hardened further. My previous employment history has no bearing on my professional performance here. Actually, it has significant bearing because it establishes a pattern of behavior that Morrison and Associates should have identified during their background check process. Either they failed to conduct proper due diligence when hiring you, or they were aware of your history and chose to ignore it. She turned to Derek. Either way, the firm's professional liability insurance carrier will be very interested in reviewing the situation, particularly since you've been sharing confidential client information with someone whose employment history suggests she may not be trustworthy with sensitive material. Derek's face went from pale to green. Professional liability issues could trigger insurance investigations that would review every aspect of the firm's operations, potentially exposing not just his personal misconduct, but any other questionable practices by other partners. What do you want, Ashley? Derek asked again, his voice barely controlled. Ashley gathered her folders and placed them back in her briefcase. What I want is irrelevant, Derek. What's going to happen is that I'm going to present this evidence to Morrison and Associates managing partners, to the State Bar of Texas Professional Conduct Committee, and to the firm's professional liability insurance carrier. The consequences of your actions will be determined by them, not by me.
She turned toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and Derek, I've already retained Marcus Rivera as my divorce attorney. He'll be in touch with you shortly to discuss the division of our marital assets. Given the extensive documentation of your financial misconduct, I expect the proceedings to be quite straightforward." Ashley left Derek's office with the satisfaction of a job well begun, but she knew the real work was just starting. As she walked through Morrison Associates' elegant corridors toward the elevator, she could hear raised voices from Derek's office. The confrontation between Derek and Vanessa would likely be illuminating, but Ashley had more important meetings to attend. Her first stop was Marcus Rivera's office, where she would present the complete evidence package and begin the formal legal process of dissolving her marriage. More importantly, she would activate the professional conduct complaint that would trigger investigations into Derek's behavior by multiple regulatory bodies. But as Ashley waited for the elevator, she reflected on how much more satisfying this process was than simple emotional revenge. Derek had assumed she was weak, naive, dependent on his success and goodwill. He was about to discover that strategic patience was far more dangerous than emotional impulse. The elevator arrived and Ashley stepped inside, already planning her next moves. Phase 2 of her strategy was about to begin, and Derek Morrison was going to learn that underestimating Ashley Marquez was the most expensive mistake of his life. Ashley spent the rest of the afternoon in Marcus Rivera's office, methodically presenting her evidence and outlining her strategy for the divorce proceedings. Marcus reviewed each document with the careful attention of a lawyer who recognized the exceptional quality of Ashley's preparation. "This is remarkable work," Marcus said, closing the final folder. "You've documented financial misconduct that most forensic accountants would take months to uncover. How long have you been planning this?" "I haven't been planning anything," Ashley replied. "I've been responding to Derek's choices with appropriate professional diligence. Everything I've documented represents his actual behavior, not manufactured evidence." Marcus nodded, appreciatively. The financial misconduct alone would be sufficient for a favorable divorce settlement, but the professional ethics violations could destroy his entire career. "Are you prepared for the level of public attention this case might generate?" Ashley considered the question carefully. Houston's legal community is indeed small and gossipy, and Derek's downfall would certainly be noticed by every major firm in the city. But that kind of attention could also be valuable for someone in Ashley's line of work, demonstrating her capabilities to potential clients who valued thorough, discreet intelligence gathering. "I'm prepared for whatever consequences result from exposing the truth about Derek's behavior, but I'm also prepared to use the situation to advance my own professional interests." Marcus raised his eyebrow. "How so?"
Ashley smiled, the expression carrying more warmth than any she'd shown Derek or Vanessa. "Marcus, you've known me for 6 years, but you've never really understood what Marquez Strategic Consulting actually does." Derek certainly never bothered to learn. "This entire situation is going to serve as a very public demonstration of my capabilities." She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a business card, handing it to Marcus. The card was elegant but understated, listing Ashley's name, company, and contact information without any description of services or specialties. "I'm going to propose something that will benefit both of us," Ashley continued. "Rivera and Associates handles some of the largest corporate clients in Texas. Those clients occasionally need the kind of strategic intelligence and competitive analysis that Marquez Strategic Consulting provides. Derek's professional destruction is going to establish my reputation as someone who can uncover information that others miss and use it with devastating effectiveness." Marcus studied the business card, understanding dawning in his expression. "You're talking about turning this personal situation into a professional marketing opportunity." "I'm talking about demonstrating my value to potential clients who need to understand their competitors, their business partners, or their own vulnerabilities." Ashley's voice carried the confidence of someone who had thought through every angle. "Derek made the mistake of underestimating me. I intend to make sure that nobody else makes that same mistake." Marcus leaned back in his chair, clearly impressed by Ashley's strategic thinking. "You realize that this approach will make you some enemies. Derek has friends and allies throughout Houston's legal community." Ashley nodded calmly.
He also has competitors and rivals who will be very interested to learn about his professional misconduct and ethical violations. The same evidence that destroys Derek's reputation will enhance mine, particularly among clients who value thorough, accurate intelligence gathering. She stood and gathered her materials. Filed the divorce papers tomorrow, Marcus. Include full disclosure of Derek's financial misconduct and a demand for complete asset division based on his breach of fiduciary duties. I want this case to proceed as quickly and publicly as possible. Marcus shook her hand, his expression mixing professional admiration with personal caution. Ashley, you're playing a very sophisticated game. I hope you're prepared for all the possible outcomes. Ashley smiled, but her eyes were cold as winter steel. Marcus, I've been preparing for this my entire adult life. Derek just didn't bother to notice. As Ashley left Marcus Rivera's office, her phone buzzed with multiple missed calls and text messages from Derek. She deleted them without reading, understanding that his panic would only intensify over the next few days as the full scope of her evidence became clear to Morrison Associates management. Her next stop was the offices of the Houston Chronicle's business section, where she had cultivated a relationship with senior reporter Jennifer Walsh over the past 3 years. Jennifer specialized in corporate ethics stories and had a particular interest in professional misconduct within Houston's legal community. "Ashley, this is unexpected," Jennifer said, greeting her in the newspaper's downtown offices. "What brings you here on a Wednesday afternoon?" Ashley settled into the chair across from Jennifer's desk, noting the awards and commendations that decorated the reporter's workspace. Jennifer Walsh had built her reputation on exposing corporate fraud and professional misconduct, making her the perfect vehicle for Ashley's next strategic move. "I have a story that might interest your readers," Ashley said, pulling out a carefully edited version of her evidence against Derek. "It involves systematic misuse of professional resources, potential ethics violations, and a pattern of behavior that suggests broader problems within Houston's legal community." Jennifer's eyes lit up with professional interest. "What kind of story?" Ashley handed over a folder containing selected documents, financial records, and a timeline of Derek's misconduct. She had carefully removed any information that might compromise her own position while retaining everything necessary to establish the scope of Derek's professional failures. A senior partner at a major Houston law firm has been systematically violating professional conduct codes, misusing firm resources for personal activities, and compromising client confidentiality. Ashley's voice was fact of matter, as if discussing quarterly earnings reports. The pattern of behavior extends over at least 8 months and involves substantial financial misconduct. Jennifer began reviewing the documents, her expression growing more serious as she absorbed the implications. "These are internal communications and financial records. How did you obtain them?" "Through legitimate channels involving common property rights and fiduciary duty investigations," Ashley replied carefully. "Everything here was obtained legally and can be independently verified through public records and professional documentation." That was technically true, though it didn't fully explain Ashley's methods or motivations. Jennifer didn't need to know the personal details of Ashley's marriage to Derek. She only needed to understand the professional misconduct that would interest Chronicle readers. "This is significant," Jennifer said after reviewing the key documents. "If these allegations can be substantiated, we're looking at potential disbarment, criminal fraud charges, and major professional liability issues for Morrison and Associates." Ashley nodded. "I thought you might find it newsworthy, given your focus on professional accountability and corporate ethics." Jennifer looked up from the documents, studying Ashley with newfound interest. "Ashley, I've known you socially for several years, but I had no idea you were conducting this kind of investigation. This represents months of detailed financial analysis and legal research. I have a background in corporate intelligence and strategic analysis. When patterns of misconduct became apparent, I felt obligated to document them properly." That was a significant understatement, but Jennifer didn't need to know the full scope of Ashley's capabilities. For now, it was sufficient that she understood the quality and credibility of the evidence Ashley was providing.
I'll need to verify these allegations independently before we can publish. That means contacting Morrison and Associates for comment, potentially triggering their own internal investigation. Ashley smiled. I would expect nothing less from a journalist of your caliber. Professional accountability requires thorough verification of all claims. Jennifer made notes as she reviewed the evidence, asking clarifying questions about dates, financial amounts, and verification procedures. Ashley answered each question with precision, demonstrating the depth of her preparation and the accuracy of her documentation. One more question, Jennifer said finally. What's your personal interest in exposing this misconduct? Are you a client of Morrison and Associates, a competitor, someone with inside knowledge of the firm's operations? Ashley had anticipated this question and prepared her response carefully. I'm someone who believes that professional misconduct should have consequences, regardless of the social connections or perceived respectability of the individuals involved. Houston's legal community deserves better than lawyers who prioritize personal interests over professional responsibilities. It was a perfectly reasonable answer that revealed nothing about Ashley's personal relationship to Derek, while establishing her motivation in terms that Jennifer would find credible and admirable.
Jennifer closed the folder and leaned back in her chair. Ashley, this is going to be a major story if the evidence holds up. Are you prepared for the attention it might bring to you as the source? Ashley nodded calmly. I'm prepared for whatever consequences result from exposing professional misconduct. Sometimes accountability requires courage from those who have access to the truth. As Ashley left the Houston Chronicle offices, she felt the deep satisfaction of pieces falling perfectly into place. By tomorrow morning, Derek would face professional conduct investigations from multiple directions simultaneously. The state bar would begin reviewing his ethics violations, Morrison and Associates would launch their own internal investigation, and the Chronicle would start verifying allegations that could destroy his reputation permanently. More importantly, Ashley's role in exposing Derek's misconduct would establish her credibility as a strategic intelligence professional, capable of uncovering information that others missed and using it with devastating effectiveness. The personal revenge against Derek was satisfying, but the professional advancement opportunities were far more valuable in the long term. Ashley's phone rang as she walked back to her car, displaying a number she didn't recognize. She answered cautiously. Mrs. Morrison? This is Gloria from Morrison and Associates. Mr. Harrison would like to speak with you if you have time to come back to the office. James Harrison was Morrison and Associates' managing partner, Derek's boss, and the person ultimately responsible for the firm's professional conduct standards. If he was requesting a meeting with Ashley, it meant that Derek had already informed the firm's management about her allegations, or that word of her investigation had spread through other channels. I'll be there in 20 minutes, Gloria. Ashley smiled as she ended the call. Phase 3 of her strategy was beginning ahead of schedule, and Derek Morrison was about to discover that his problems were just getting started. Part 3. The Reckoning. James Harrison's office occupied the entire northwest corner of Morrison & Associates' 42nd floor, with panoramic views of downtown Houston and furnishings that suggested both wealth and conservative taste. When Ashley entered, she found Harrison seated behind his massive mahogany desk, flanked by two other men she recognized as senior partners. The atmosphere was formal and tense, clearly indicating this was not a social courtesy call. Mrs. Morrison, thank you for coming on such short notice, Harrison said, rising to shake her hand. His grip was firm but measured, the handshake of someone accustomed to managing difficult conversations. Please, have a seat. Ashley settled into the leather chair facing Harrison's desk, noting the careful positioning that placed her at a slight disadvantage relative to the three men. The psychology of power dynamics in corporate settings was something she understood intimately from her consulting work, and Harrison was clearly attempting to establish control over the conversation from the outset. I assume Derek has briefed you about our discussion this afternoon, Ashley said, choosing to take the initiative rather than waiting for Harrison to define the parameters of their meeting. Harrison exchanged glances with his colleagues before responding. Derek has shared some concerning information about allegations you've apparently made regarding his professional conduct and his relationship with Miss Chen. We felt it would be appropriate to hear your perspective directly. Ashley opened her briefcase and removed 3 identical folders, placing one in front of each man. My perspective is documented comprehensively in these files. What you'll find is evidence of systematic misuse of firm resources, violations of professional conduct codes, and breaches of client confidentiality that have been occurring for approximately 8 months. The senior partners began reviewing the documents while Ashley watched their expressions carefully. She had organized the evidence to present the most damaging information first, ensuring that the scope of Derek's misconduct would be immediately apparent to anyone with legal training. "These are serious allegations," said Thomas Wheeler, the senior litigation partner. "Financial records, communication logs, expense reports. How did you obtain these materials?" "Through legitimate channels involving community property access and fiduciary duty investigations," Ashley replied smoothly. "Everything in those files was obtained legally and can be independently verified through your own firm records." Harrison looked up from his folder, his expression grave. "Mrs. Morrison, if these allegations are accurate, they represent potential criminal fraud in addition to professional ethics violations. Are you prepared to testify under oath about the accuracy of this documentation?" Ashley met his gaze steadily. "Mr. Harrison, I'm prepared to provide sworn testimony, additional documentation, and expert witness analysis to any investigative body that requests it. The evidence speaks for itself." The third partner, Robert Chen, who Ashley noted shared a surname with Vanessa, though they appeared to be unrelated, cleared his throat. "Have you presented this information to any external authorities or regulatory bodies?" "I've retained Marcus Rivera as my divorce counsel, and he will be filing appropriate notifications with the state bar as required by professional conduct rules. I've also provided background information to other parties who may have legitimate interests in this matter." That was a carefully worded way of describing her meeting with Jennifer Walsh without explicitly mentioning the media involvement. Harrison and his colleagues would understand the implications without forcing Ashley to specify exactly which parties had received information. Harrison closed his folder and leaned back in his chair. "Mrs. Morrison, Morrison Associates has built its reputation over 40 years on the basis of professional integrity and ethical conduct. If Derek has violated those standards, we will take appropriate action, regardless of his partnership status or personal relationships." "I've heard Morrison." Ashley nodded approvingly. "That's exactly what I hope to hear, Mr. Harrison. Professional accountability requires consistent enforcement of ethical standards, particularly for those in positions of leadership and trust." Wheeler leaned forward slightly. "What outcome are you seeking from this situation? Are you looking for financial compensation, public acknowledgement, specific disciplinary action against Derek or Ms. Chen?" Ashley considered the question carefully before responding. "I'm seeking appropriate consequences for documented professional misconduct. The specific nature of those consequences should be determined by the relevant regulatory and disciplinary authorities based on their assessment of the evidence." It was a diplomatic answer that avoided suggesting Ashley was motivated by personal revenge, while making clear that she expected serious professional repercussions for Derek's behavior. The senior partners seemed to appreciate her measured approach, though their expressions remained carefully neutral. "We'll need to conduct our own internal investigation. That will involve interviewing Derek, Ms. Chen, and possibly other employees who may have knowledge of these alleged activities. Are you willing to participate in that process if we request additional information or clarification?" Ashley smiled slightly. "Of course."
Professional investigations require thorough examination of all relevant evidence and testimony from all knowledgeable parties. Robert Chen spoke for the first time since introducing himself. "Mrs. Morrison, these allegations will obviously impact your divorce proceedings with Derek. How do we ensure that our professional investigation isn't compromised by personal legal strategies?" Ashley had anticipated this concern and prepared her response accordingly. "Mr. Chen, my divorce proceedings will be conducted according to Texas family law based on documented financial misconduct and breach of fiduciary duties. The professional ethics investigation will be conducted according to state bar regulations based on documented violations of professional conduct codes. The evidence overlaps because Derek's personal and professional misconduct overlaps, but the investigations serve different purposes under different legal frameworks." Harrison nodded slowly.
That's a reasonable distinction. We'll coordinate with Marcus Rivera's office to ensure that our investigation doesn't interfere with your legal proceedings while still fulfilling our professional obligations. Ashley gathered her briefcase and prepared to leave. Gentlemen, I appreciate your commitment to professional accountability. Derek made choices that violated both personal and professional trust. The consequences of those choices should be determined by the appropriate authorities based on established standards and documented evidence. As she reached the door, Wheeler called after her. Mrs. Morrison, one final question. How long have you been documenting Derek's activities? This level of detailed analysis suggests extensive preparation. Ashley turned back to face the three men, allowing herself a small smile. Gentlemen, I've been documenting irregular patterns in our household finances and unexplained changes in Derek's behavior for approximately 3 months. The professional misconduct became apparent as I investigated the personal misconduct. Sometimes careful attention to detail reveals problems that others prefer to ignore. After leaving Harrison's office, Ashley felt the satisfaction of another strategic objective accomplished. Morrison Associates would now conduct their own investigation that would independently verify her allegations against Derek. More importantly, the senior partners understood that Ashley was not simply a spurned wife seeking emotional revenge, but a sophisticated professional who had uncovered genuine misconduct and was pursuing accountability through appropriate channels. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Marcus Rivera. Filed divorce papers this afternoon. Derek's attorney wants to meet tomorrow to discuss settlement terms. Are you ready to negotiate? Ashley typed back quickly. No negotiations until professional investigations are complete. Derek's financial misconduct and ethics violations will determine settlement terms, not his preferences. The next phase of her strategy required careful timing. Derek would likely become increasingly desperate as the scope of his problems became clear, potentially leading to poor decisions that would further damage his position. Ashley needed to maintain pressure while avoiding any appearance of personal vindictiveness that might undermine her credibility with investigators. Her next stop was a meeting with Patricia Wong at Hartley Communications, where the completed forensic analysis of Derek's financial patterns would provide additional ammunition for both the divorce proceedings and the professional conduct investigation. Patricia's office was buzzing with activity as Ashley arrived, with several analysts working on what appeared to be a major corporate intelligence project. Ashley nodded to familiar faces before settling into Patricia's office for their scheduled debriefing. Ashley, this analysis was fascinating from a professional perspective, Patricia said, opening the comprehensive report her team had prepared. Your husband's financial patterns show systematic deception that extends well beyond simple marital infidelity. Ashley reviewed the executive summary, noting the professional quality of Hartley's analysis. What did you discover that wasn't apparent from the raw data? Patricia pulled up a complex chart showing Derek's spending patterns over the past year. The financial manipulation is far more sophisticated than typical extramarital affair concealment. Derek has been using multiple credit cards, cash advances, and expense account manipulations to create layers of separation between his actual activities and the financial records accessible to you. She pointed to specific data points on the timeline. This suggests someone with professional knowledge of financial fraud techniques helped him structure these activities. The level of sophistication indicates either legal or accounting training. Ashley felt a chill of recognition. Are you suggesting that Derek had professional assistance in concealing his misconduct? Patricia nodded grimly. The patterns suggest coordination with someone who understands forensic accounting and legal discovery procedures. Either Derek is far more sophisticated than his behavior suggests, or he's been working with someone who has expertise in financial concealment. Ashley absorbed this information while considering its implications. If Derek had been collaborating with other professionals to conceal his misconduct, the scope of potential violations extended far beyond Morrison and Associates. Other lawyers, accountants, or financial advisors might be implicated in a conspiracy that could trigger federal investigations. What kind of professional assistance are we discussing? Ashley asked. Patricia pulled up another screen showing comparative analysis of Derek's financial patterns against known fraud schemes. The credit card manipulation techniques match patterns used in cases involving attorney trust fund violations. The expense account structuring resembles strategies used to conceal kickback schemes in professional service firms. The timing and amounts of cash transactions suggest coordination with banking professionals who understand regulatory reporting requirements. Ashley stared at the data, realizing that her investigation had uncovered something far more significant than a simple affair funded by professional resources. Derek appeared to be involved in systematic financial fraud, violations of banking and tax regulations. Patricia, I need you to prepare a supplemental report focusing specifically on the evidence of professional assistance in these activities. Include comparative analysis showing how Derek's patterns match known fraud schemes and identify areas where additional investigation might reveal other participants. Patricia made notes while reviewing the analysis results. Ashley, if this involves professional colleagues in criminal activities, you're looking at potential federal investigations that could extend far beyond Derek's personal misconduct. Are you prepared for that level of scrutiny? Ashley considered the question carefully. Federal investigations would certainly complicate her divorce proceedings and potentially expose aspects of her own business activities to government attention. However, the evidence suggested criminal behavior that went beyond personal betrayal into professional corruption that could affect other innocent victims. I'm prepared for whatever consequences result from following the evidence wherever it leads. If Derek is involved in systematic fraud, other people deserve protection from his future misconduct. Patricia nodded approvingly. I'll have the supplemental report ready by tomorrow morning. This is going to be a very complex case with implications that extend beyond your divorce proceedings.
As Ashley left Hartley Communications, her phone rang with a call from Jennifer Walsh at the Houston Chronicle. The reporter's voice carried excitement that suggested significant developments in her verification of Ashley's allegations. Ashley, I've been fact-checking the information you provided, and I've uncovered some additional details that you should know about before we publish. Ashley pulled into a coffee shop parking lot to give the conversation her full attention. What kind of additional details? Jennifer's voice carried the satisfaction of a reporter who had uncovered a major story. Derek Morrison isn't the only Morrison Associates partner who's been using firm resources for personal activities. My investigation revealed similar patterns involving 2 other senior partners, suggesting systematic problems with the firm's internal controls and oversight procedures. Ashley felt a mixture of shock and vindication. If other partners were engaging in similar misconduct, it validated her allegations against Derek while suggesting that Morrison Associates had deeper institutional problems than she had realized. What kind of similar patterns? Ashley asked. Jennifer explained that her investigation had revealed expense account irregularities and questionable financial transactions involving Robert Chen and Thomas Wheeler, the same partners who had been present during Ashley's meeting with James Harrison. The irony was not lost on Ashley that the men questioning her about Derek's ethics violations were apparently engaged in their own misconduct. This changes the entire scope of the story, Jennifer continued. We're not just talking about one lawyer's personal failures, but potential systematic corruption within one of Houston's most prestigious law firms. Ashley absorbed this information while considering its implications for her own strategy. If Morrison Associates was facing comprehensive professional conduct investigations involving multiple partners, Derek's individual misconduct would be part of a much larger scandal that could destroy the firm's reputation and business relationships. Jennifer, how confident are you about the accuracy of this additional information? Very confident. I have documentation from multiple sources, including former employees and clients who have provided corroborating evidence about questionable practices extending back several years. Ashley smiled grimly. Then I think you have a story that will be of significant interest to Houston's business community. Jennifer agreed to contact Ashley before publishing to ensure accuracy of any quotes or references to her role in exposing the misconduct. Ashley appreciated the professional courtesy while recognizing that the story's publication would trigger events beyond her direct control. After ending the call with Jennifer, Ashley sat in her car for several minutes, processing the rapidly expanding scope of her investigation. What had begun as documentation of Derek's affair had evolved into evidence of systematic professional corruption that could destroy Morrison Associates and implicate multiple attorneys in criminal activities. The strategic implications were enormous. Derek was no longer facing individual professional discipline, but potential criminal prosecution as part of a larger conspiracy. Morrison Associates was facing institutional destruction that could affect hundreds of employees and thousands of clients.
Ashley's role as the person who exposed the misconduct would establish her reputation as someone capable of uncovering information that law enforcement and regulatory agencies had missed. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Derek. Ashley, we need to talk immediately. This situation is getting out of control and affecting innocent people. Ashley smiled as she read the message. Derek was finally beginning to understand the scope of consequences flowing from his choices, but he was still thinking in terms of damage control rather than accountability. His reference to innocent people suggested he was more concerned about his colleagues and his firm than about the victims of their collective misconduct. She typed back briefly. All communication should go through our attorneys. I have no interest in private negotiations. Derek's response came immediately. This isn't about divorce terms. There are things you don't understand about the firm's operations that could affect your own business interests. Ashley stared at the message, recognizing a threat disguised as a warning. Derek was apparently suggesting that exposing Morrison Associates' misconduct could somehow damage Marquez Strategic Consulting. Either he had finally discovered the true nature of Ashley's business operations, or he was bluffing in hopes of forcing her to moderate her accusations. She typed back carefully. Derek, any attempt to threaten or intimidate me will be documented and reported to appropriate authorities. I suggest you focus on responding to the investigations that are already underway. Derek's final message was brief, but ominous. You have no idea what you've started, Ashley. Some secrets are dangerous for everyone involved. Ashley deleted the entire message thread and blocked Derek's number. His attempt at intimidation confirmed that he was becoming desperate, which could lead to increasingly poor decisions that would further damage his position. More concerning was his suggestion that he knew something about Ashley's business that could be used against her. Ashley spent the remainder of the afternoon reviewing her own business operations and client relationships, looking for any potential vulnerabilities that Derek might exploit. Marquez Strategic Consulting operated within legal boundaries and maintained professional relationships with reputable clients. But corporate intelligence work necessarily involved accessing information that some parties might prefer to keep confidential. Her review revealed no obvious weaknesses, but Ashley recognized that desperate people sometimes created problems that didn't previously exist. If Derek was planning to make false accusations about her business practices, she needed to be prepared to defend both her professional reputation and her client relationships. That evening, Ashley worked late in her Pennzoil Place office, preparing comprehensive documentation of her own business operations and client services. If Derek attempted to retaliate against her professionally, she would respond with the same thorough preparation that had exposed his misconduct. As she worked, Ashley reflected on how dramatically her life had changed in just a few days. Less than a week ago, she had been playing the role of a supportive partner-wife, managing household responsibilities, while Derek climbed the partnership ladder at Morrison Associates. Now, she was orchestrating the destruction of his career while positioning herself as Houston's premier corporate intelligence professional. The transformation felt natural and overdue. For 6 years, Ashley had suppressed her professional ambitions and strategic instincts to support Derek's career advancement. His betrayal had freed her from that artificial constraint, allowing her to demonstrate capabilities that had been hidden behind the facade of domestic contentment. Her phone rang, displaying Marquez Rivera's number. Ashley answered, expecting an update about Derek's response to the divorce filing. Ashley, we have a problem, Marcus said without preamble. Derek's attorney called this afternoon with some very serious accusations about your business operations. They're claiming you've been involved in corporate espionage and illegal information gathering for corporate clients. They claim to have evidence that you've accessed confidential databases and private communications without proper authorization. Marcus, those accusations are completely false, Ashley said firmly. Marquez Strategic Consulting operates within all applicable legal boundaries and maintains strict ethical standards for information gathering. I can provide complete documentation of our procedures and client services. Marcus sounded relieved but cautious. I believed you, but I needed to hear you say it directly.
Derek's attorneys are obviously trying to create a mutual destruction scenario where you both face serious legal consequences. They're hoping to force a favorable divorce settlement by threatening to expose what they claim is illegal activity on your part. Ashley felt a cold fury building in her chest. Derek was apparently willing to make false accusations about criminal activity to avoid facing consequences for his own misconduct. The level of desperation suggested that the investigations were proceeding even worse for him than Ashley had anticipated. Marcus, I want you to demand that Derek's attorneys provide specific evidence supporting their accusations. If they can't produce documentation of alleged illegal activities, I want them charged with making false statements and attempting to intimidate a witness in an ongoing professional conduct investigation. Marcus agreed to pursue aggressive countermeasures against Derek's legal team while Ashley prepared defensive documentation for her own business practices. The escalation confirmed that Derek was panicking, but it also meant that Ashley needed to be prepared for increasingly desperate and potentially dangerous retaliation. The next morning brought news that vindicated Ashley's strategic patience while confirming Derek's desperation. Jennifer Walsh's story appeared on the front page of the Houston Chronicle's business section under the headline, "Ethics Investigation Targets Major Houston Law Firm." The article detailed systematic misconduct at Morrison Associates involving multiple partners and potentially criminal violations of professional conduct codes. Ashley's role in exposing the misconduct was mentioned prominently but professionally, describing her as a concerned party who had documented financial irregularities and reported them to appropriate authorities. The article avoided sensationalizing the personal aspects of Ashley's situation while clearly establishing her credibility as someone who had uncovered significant professional corruption. The story's impact was immediate and dramatic. By noon, Morrison and Associates had issued a statement announcing that James Harrison was taking a leave of absence pending completion of internal and external investigations. Derek, Robert Chen, and Thomas Wheeler were suspended from all client responsibilities while regulatory authorities reviewed allegations of professional misconduct. Ashley's phone rang constantly throughout the morning with calls from potential clients who had read the Chronicle story and were interested in Marquez's strategic consulting services. Corporate executives, legal professionals, and business leaders who needed thorough, discreet intelligence gathering were clearly impressed by Ashley's ability to uncover information that had escaped detection by regulatory authorities and internal oversight procedures. By the end of the day, Ashley had scheduled consultations with 12 potential new clients, including 2 Fortune 500 companies and a major municipal government agency. The publicity surrounding Derek's downfall was generating exactly the kind of professional recognition that Ashley had strategically planned. Marcus Rivera called with an update about the divorce proceedings that confirmed Derek's increasingly desperate situation. "Ashley, Derek's legal team has withdrawn their accusations about your business operations," Marcus reported. Apparently, they realized they had no evidence to support their claims and were concerned about sanctions for frivolous allegations. Ashley smiled with satisfaction. "What's Derek's position now regarding settlement terms?" Marcus chuckled. "Complete capitulation. He's willing to accept whatever division of assets you propose, waive any claims to spousal support, and agree to confidentiality provisions that prevent him from making any future accusations about your business or personal conduct." Ashley considered this development carefully. Derek's willingness to accept unfavorable terms suggested that his legal and professional situation was even worse than the public reports indicated. Either he was facing criminal prosecution, or Morrison and Associates was pressuring him to resolve personal legal matters quickly to minimize additional publicity damage. "What about the timing?" Ashley asked. Marcus explained that Derek wanted to finalize the divorce as quickly as possible, preferably within 30 days. His attorneys suggested that rapid resolution would demonstrate Derek's commitment to addressing personal issues while focusing on professional rehabilitation.
Ashley recognized the strategic advantage of Derek's desperation, while understanding that prolonged divorce proceedings might actually work against her interests. The longer the case remained active, the more opportunities Derek would have to discover information about her business operations or develop new strategies for retaliation. Accept his terms, Ashley decided, but include provisions for additional financial penalties if he violates confidentiality agreements or attempts any future retaliation. I want this resolved quickly so I can focus on building my business rather than managing legal proceedings. Marcus agreed to finalize the divorce settlement within the requested timeframe while ensuring that Ashley's interests were fully protected by the agreement terms. 3 weeks later, Ashley stood in her Pennzoil Place office reviewing contracts with 4 major new clients who had retained Marquez Strategic Consulting for corporate intelligence and competitive analysis projects. The revenue from these contracts exceeded Derek's annual partnership income at Morrison Associates, establishing Ashley's financial independence while demonstrating her professional capabilities. Derek had signed the divorce decree the previous afternoon, accepting a settlement that left him with minimal assets and substantial ongoing financial obligations. His legal career was effectively over, with the state bar proceeding toward permanent disbarment based on evidence of systematic professional misconduct. Morrison Associates had dissolved as a partnership, with the firm's assets liquidated to satisfy client claims and regulatory penalties. Vanessa Chen had disappeared entirely, reportedly relocating to another state after her role in the firm's misconduct became public knowledge. Ashley had heard rumors that Vanessa was facing her own professional conduct investigation in connection with her previous employment history, but those details were no longer relevant to Ashley's situation. The transformation of Ashley's life was complete. 6 months ago, she had been Derek Morrison's supportive wife, managing household responsibilities while he advanced his legal career. Now she was Ashley Marquez, CEO of Houston's premier corporate intelligence firm, with a client list that included some of Texas's largest companies and most influential business leaders. The personal betrayal that had triggered Ashley's investigation seemed almost insignificant compared to the professional opportunities that had resulted from exposing Derek's misconduct. What had begun as documentation of marital infidelity had evolved into a comprehensive demonstration of Ashley's capabilities as a strategic intelligence professional. Ashley's phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. She opened it carefully, wondering if Derek was attempting to contact her despite the divorce settlement's confidentiality provisions. Instead, the message was from Jennifer Walsh at the Houston Chronicle. Ashley, congratulations on your business success. Your story has inspired several other women to investigate suspicious financial patterns in their own marriages. Would you be interested in providing guidance or consulting services to help them document potential misconduct? Ashley smiled as she read the message, recognizing another strategic opportunity emerging from her successful handling of Derek's betrayal. Women throughout Houston and beyond were apparently realizing that careful documentation and professional investigation could expose misconduct that had previously been dismissed as paranoia or jealousy. She typed back quickly, "Jennifer, I'd be happy to discuss how Marquez Strategic Consulting might assist other women in similar situations. Professional accountability requires careful documentation and strategic presentation of evidence." Ashley walked to her office windows, looking out over downtown Houston's glittering skyline. 6 months ago, she had discovered Derek's affair through careful observation and systematic investigation. Today, she controlled a business empire that generated substantial revenue while providing valuable services to clients throughout Texas. The 847 phone calls that had first alerted Ashley to Derek's misconduct seemed almost quaint compared to the comprehensive surveillance and analysis capabilities she now offered to corporate clients. Derek had underestimated her strategic intelligence, professional capabilities, and capacity for patient revenge. Those mistakes had cost him everything, while providing Ashley with the foundation for unprecedented success. Her reflection was interrupted by her assistant's voice on the intercom.
Miss Marquez, your 4 o'clock appointment is here. The delegation from Hartwell Industries. Ashley gathered her materials for the meeting, smiling at how naturally the business world had adapted to calling her Miss Marquez rather than Mrs. Morrison. The change in name represented far more than divorce proceedings. It symbolized her emergence as an independent professional force rather than someone's supportive spouse. Hartwell Industries was one of Houston's largest energy companies, and their interest in retaining Marquez Strategic Consulting represented validation of Ashley's reputation as the region's premier corporate intelligence professional. The contract they were discussing would establish long-term relationships that could generate revenue for years while providing Ashley with access to information networks throughout the energy.
As she walked toward the conference room where the Hartwell delegation was waiting, Ashley reflected on the lessons learned from her systematic destruction of Derek Morrison's life and career. Strategic patience was more effective than emotional revenge. Professional capabilities hidden behind domestic facades could be revealed dramatically when circumstances required. And careful documentation of misconduct could trigger consequences that extended far beyond the original offenses. Derek had called her paranoid when she questioned his relationship with Vanessa Chen. The 847 phone calls in a single month had proven that careful attention to details revealed patterns that others preferred to ignore. Derek's mockery of her concerns had motivated Ashley to demonstrate exactly how thorough her analytical capabilities could be when properly focused. The irony was delicious. Derek's affair with Vanessa had been intended to provide him with emotional satisfaction and physical pleasure while maintaining his marriage to Ashley for social and financial advantages. Instead, his misconduct had destroyed his career, his reputation, and his financial security while providing Ashley with the opportunity to reveal capabilities that nobody had previously suspected. Ashley entered the conference room where 5 executives from Hartwell Industries were reviewing presentations about Marquez Strategic Consulting Services. Their expressions suggested genuine interest in Ashley's analytical capabilities and professional discretion, exactly the kind of client relationships that would sustain her business growth for years to come. "Gentlemen, thank you for your patience," Ashley said, taking her seat at the head of the conference table. "I understand you're interested in comprehensive, competitive intelligence services for the North American energy sector." The lead executive nodded approvingly. "Miss Marquez, your recent work exposing professional misconduct at Morrison Associates demonstrated exactly the kind of thorough, discreet investigation that Hartwell needs for our business intelligence requirements." Ashley smiled, recognizing that Derek's destruction was continuing to generate professional opportunities months after their divorce was finalized. "I appreciate your confidence in Marquez Strategic Consulting. We specialize in uncovering information that others miss and presenting it in ways that enable strategic decision-making." The meeting proceeded smoothly, with Ashley demonstrating her analytical capabilities while the Hartwell executives outlined their requirements for ongoing competitive intelligence services. By the end of the session, they had agreed to a comprehensive consulting contract that would generate substantial revenue while establishing Ashley's reputation throughout the energy industry. As the Hartwell delegation left her office, Ashley felt deep satisfaction with how completely her life had been transformed by Derek's betrayal and her strategic response. What had begun as personal humiliation had evolved into professional triumph that exceeded her most optimistic expectations. Derek Morrison had learned that underestimating Ashley Marquez was the most expensive mistake of his life. His 847 phone calls to Vanessa Chen had triggered investigations that destroyed his career, his reputation, and his financial security while establishing Ashley as Houston's premier corporate intelligence professional. The perfect revenge, Ashley reflected, was not emotional satisfaction, but strategic advancement. Derek's misconduct had provided Ashley with the opportunity to reveal capabilities that nobody had previously suspected, while his professional destruction had become the foundation for her unprecedented success. Ashley returned to her desk to review contracts for 3 additional client consultations scheduled for the following week.
The business was growing faster than she had anticipated, with potential clients throughout Texas and beyond, seeking the kind of thorough, discreet intelligence gathering that had exposed Derek's systematic professional misconduct. Her phone buzzed with one final message of the day, this one from Marcus Rivera. Ashley, congratulations on the Hartwell contract. Your success has been remarkable to observe. Derek made a serious error in judgment when he underestimated your capabilities. Ashley typed back briefly. Marcus, strategic patience and thorough preparation are more effective than emotional responses. Derek provided me with the perfect opportunity to demonstrate both. As she prepared to leave her office for the day, Ashley looked once more at Houston's skyline, thinking about all the other women who might be sitting in their homes tonight, wondering about unexplained phone calls and suspicious financial patterns in their marriages. Some of them would dismiss their concerns as paranoia. Others would investigate carefully and discover misconduct that required professional accountability. Ashley Marquez was ready to help them understand that strategic intelligence and careful documentation could transform personal betrayal into professional opportunity. Derek Morrison's 847 phone calls had taught her that sometimes the most devastating revenge was simply revealing the truth about someone's actual character and professional conduct. The perfect marriage, to Derek Morrison, had been built on false foundations and mutual deception. The perfect divorce had provided Ashley with the opportunity to build something genuine and lasting, a business empire based on her actual capabilities rather than someone else's expectations of domestic compliance. Derek had destroyed their marriage through systematic lies and professional misconduct. Ashley had responded by exposing the truth about his behavior while demonstrating capabilities he had never bothered to recognize. The contrast between their approaches explained why Derek's life was in ruins while Ashley's was flourishing beyond her most ambitious dreams. 847 phone calls in a single month had revealed far more than marital infidelity. They had exposed systematic professional corruption, triggered multiple regulatory investigations, and provided Ashley with the foundation for unprecedented business success. Derek's mockery of her attention to detail had motivated her to demonstrate exactly how thorough her analytical capabilities could be when properly focused. Ashley gathered her materials and prepared to leave Morrison Tower, the building that had once represented Derek's professional success and now housed her own thriving business empire. The symmetry was perfect. Derek's misconduct had been exposed from within the same building where Ashley now operated the intelligence firm that had triggered his professional destruction. As she waited for the elevator, Ashley reflected on how completely the power dynamic in her marriage had been reversed through strategic patience and careful preparation. Derek had assumed that his professional success and social connections made him invulnerable to consequences from Ashley's investigation. He had discovered that underestimating someone's capabilities while providing them with extensive evidence of misconduct was a combination that guaranteed catastrophic consequences. The elevator doors opened and Ashley stepped inside, already planning her strategy for the next day's client meetings. The business world had embraced Ashley Marquez with enthusiasm that validated her decision to emerge from Derek Morrison's shadow and demonstrate her actual capabilities. Derek Morrison had learned that 847 phone calls to Vanessa Chen in a single month were impossible to explain as professional communication. Ashley Marquez had learned that strategic patience and thorough preparation could transform any betrayal into unprecedented opportunity for professional advancement. The perfect marriage had ended with perfect revenge. Derek's systematic destruction through exposure of his actual character and professional conduct, while Ashley emerged as an independent business leader whose capabilities exceeded everyone's expectations, including her own.